Welcome to Celestial Essentials, our foundational inaugural astrology course, which is meant to take you from wherever you are in your astrology practice to the very next level. We are Celestial Curiosities, and we're so excited to have you here. We have this exciting 9-week course that you can follow along with on your own, or you can join us in our live cohort. Meli, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the details?
I would love to. So, like Maggie said, it's 9 weeks. You might be listening to this before we've started. And we did announce that our starting date is May 20th, 2026. And if you're listening prior, wonderful. You're getting a little bit of a head start, or perhaps you just want to keep learning on your own as you have been with us since day one. Thank you for being here. Or maybe you actually want to come join us for 9 weeks of live classes with us that also include intentional activities, including a custom designed workbook and study materials. We will be doing tons of Q&A, tons of actual practice of everything that you're learning. So like Maggie said, I really like thinking of it as wherever you are in astrology right now, it will take you to that next level. I would say that's like beginner intermediate. Of course, if you're already like pretty advanced, then this is not going to be advanced stuff. That's something one day that we might get into, that this is like the essentials. And really, this is for the person who's like, I try to get this. Like I've tried, I look at my chart and I'm like, yeah, kind of. But then I close it because I'm like, no, I can't. I don't understand what's happening there. This is really, really for you if you've got that, or if you've got this desire to understand your parents, your spouse, your children, whatever better. So besides the 9 weeks of live courses, which start technically, actually, the first live class is Wednesday, May 27th, and it will go till July 22nd. Again, this is 2026, in case you're listening to this in late future. But on May 20th is when we drop all of the information about all the things so you can get started with your studying. And we will have early bird pricing until May 6th. And you can go to the website right now to sign up and get all of the information that you may desire, and reach out if you have any questions. On top of that, I said the workbook and the study materials, but you do also get a 1-year membership to Luna Astrology, which is what we use for all of our astrology needs. And they are also our sponsor. Maggie, give them some love.
Oh my gosh, we love Luna. You will be getting like basically one-on-one learning of how to use the software in a group setting. I don't know why I said one-on-one, but that's going to be a part of our curriculum, is learning how to use the software. It has so many amazing features. You're going to see it on the video if you are watching this. One of Luna's kind of like statements of who they are is, astrology is the story of your life, and Luna helps you live it. And that's exactly what we are doing with Celestial Essentials. We want to give you tools so you can be sovereign and self-aware and really live the life that you want to live. So thank you so much for this visually stunning and highly efficient. It has all these different features that we've never found anywhere else. We're so excited to be affiliated with Luna, and we really can't wait to teach you how to use it.
Awesome. Okay, so today we are going to be covering aspects, and aspects are essentially the final ingredient necessary to start putting all this stuff together, right? So we've already been through the planets, which are the what, the sign, which is the how, the house, which is the where. We kind of really have had a nice look at the chart. We look at it now and we get an idea, like we know what we're looking at. Well, the aspects are the final ingredient to make sure that when we are synthesizing a chart, interpreting a chart, that we're getting to that sort of final layer. And it's not really the final layer, because there's so much other stuff that we could eventually get into, but of the essentials, you do need to at least have an idea of what the aspects are doing. So what are the aspects? Well, first of all, the aspects are visually. Maggie, if you'll pull up a chart, please. And we did mention this on our initial episode as well. This center area right in the middle of the chart with all the crazy lines, we've got red lines, we've got blue lines, teal lines. These are the aspects, and the aspects are very basically defined as the way that the planets communicate with each other. So all planets in a chart are not communicating with each other. They're all living in the same ecosystem, if you will, but some of them don't even know that the other one exists. Some of them are BFFs. Some of them are not happy with each other. There are different kinds of communications occurring, and understanding what the different aspects are how we determine how these planets are in cahoots or not in cahoots. And knowing all of the fundamental basics that we've now learned about the what, the how, the where, you have to know that stuff first. So aspects were systematically developed by the Greeks, particularly Claudius Ptolemy, during the Hellenistic period. They were defined in his book Tetrabiblos, which Maggie and I have both tried to read. And wow, I'm glad that I live in current modern day. That's all I have to say. It's a lot. Okay,
like
so what'd you say?
It's like the Bible.
It's a lot is all I can really say. Okay, so there are some terms that I want to get into of what the aspects are, just so you know, and then we're going to dive into each of them. There are major aspects and minor aspects. And in fact, if you pull up the entire list of aspects, it's a bit overwhelming. We're going to be focusing on the major aspects and what I would consider one of the minor aspects. So the terms that we'll be using today and the aspects we'll be looking at are the conjunction, the opposition, the square, the trine, sextile, and the inconjunction, or the quincunx, goes by two names. So that's 6 different kinds of aspects that we'll be looking at today, and we're going to dive into each one separately. Before we do that, though, I want to mention that there are 3 primary ways that we will be using aspects in this course. There are definitely other ways that they can be used, but the primary utilization is going to be in a natal chart. So like right now, the chart we have up is my natal chart. These are all of my aspects. So we're going to look into a few of them. And that is when you're looking at anyone's natal chart, how do the planets in that person's blueprint communicate with each other? Now, another way, Maggie, will you just pull up a synastry with anything? Anybody? Doesn't matter. So another way would be in synastry. And in synastry, we're looking at 2 different people's natal charts, in this case, mine and Maggie's, side by side in a biwheel. And that's what you see here. And then we're looking at my blueprint, my natal planets, Maggie's natal planets, and how are they communicating with each other? So that's synastry. And then it will look similar, but, you know, just to do it right, let's go ahead and pull up a transit chart. Now we're looking at, this is the 3rd main way that we'll be looking at how we use aspects, which is that you've got my natal chart, my blueprint in the middle. And then on that first wheel and on the outside wheel, we have where all the planets are at this instant, transiting the sky right now. And how are those communicating with each other? So over the next 2 classes, this is going to be our major focus, finally putting all of this stuff together. We're going to have our next class will be on natal synthesis. So just focusing on the chart itself of whomever, if you could pull mine back up, Maggie, because we'll start there momentarily. And then we will also get into biwheel synthesis. Those will each have their own class, and there's going to be a lot of really good hands-on practice with getting comfortable looking at all of the craziness. And I'm especially so excited because I know you agree here, Maggie, because we've talked about this so much, but it's like the more you get to see, the more perspectives, the more charts, the more you learn, and that much faster. So being in this environment where we're all learning from each other and getting to see in these live classes, we'll be seeing multiple charts and get to really hammer in like, okay, see, wow, look, we're seeing another conjunction, but these 2 planets instead. So how does that play, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of immersion. I feel like we haven't really used that word, and I think that we probably should use that more. This is like a really immersive opportunity to just like completely dive in and get to learn all this stuff. So do you want to add anything about that?
I think this just really, the aspects really help you fine tune what you're seeing, because we can be really broad. Remember, we talked about the elements. You can look at the elemental composition and leave it at that of a person and kind of get a sense of their flavor. We can take it a step further. This really just, this helps just make a distinction between me, a sun in Scorpio, with, for example, Lisa Morton, a sun in Scorpio, or Janelle. Like, even though we share that sun sign, we, all of these lines in the middle of our charts are different. And that's why we all just have our own unique flavors. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. She's just throwing people's names out there. Those are friends of ours. um, all right, Maggie, go ahead and kick us off with conjunction. What is a conjunction? And we know I've got a couple, so.
Okay, so as we get into this aspect conversation, I want to highlight another term, which is orb. And orbs just tell you kind of how far away the planets are from one another. The planets have different ranges of orb. So you'll see, we'll zoom in here, you'll see that in Meli's chart, we have Mercury at 27 degrees of Aries, and then we have the sun at 29 degrees of Aries. That's very close. So it's only 2 degrees away from one another. So we would say that those planets are within the orb. They're active. They can communicate with each other. This particular relationship, but they're so close, if it's a conjunction. If it was 29 degree Mercury, 29 degree sun, we would call that an exact conjunction, but it's not quite there yet. But they're within this, it would be considered a tight orb. We can come over here to her Capricorn stellium, and we see Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune all within 10 degrees of each other. This is a little bit of a wider orb between, especially like Saturn and Neptune, we see an 8-degree variation between there. This is kind of where it gets into the, like, how the interpreter is looking at it. Some people will give just ranges of orbs. I think what I can say pretty consistently that everyone, all astrologers, maybe, they give a wider orb to the sun and the moon, because those planets they have such a heavy influence. They're the brightest luminary bodies. So the sun and the moon, maybe they'll give like a 10 or 12 degree range around that. So if we could see here, she has her 29 degree sun in Aries, and then a 9-degree Jupiter in Taurus. Not the same sign, not the same house, but they are within 10 degrees of each other. So some astrologers would say this is a wide conjunction.
Love that. Perfect. Yeah. So, and I was going to say also with the stellium over in Capricorn, the 0 to 10, you can't separate the Uranus and the Saturn for sure, because they're only 2 degrees away. And then I would also say that probably all astrologers agree with a 5-degree orb, like, period, no matter what planet you're looking at. I think if you're within 0 to 5 degrees, there's a conjunction there. However, if you're looking at the Saturn to Neptune, there's a version of looking at this where you're like, well, it's kind of far, but there's already a strong conjunction there. So there's already this like Capricornian thing happening. And it's like, it's just close enough. I'm going to bring it in right now. If it was like 15 degrees, I wouldn't personally, but like, it's just close enough. And while Saturn isn't the sun or the moon and has that like much bigger pull, it is playing a big role here in being that it conjunct Uranus. Uranus is at a critical degree. So I don't want to get too complex, but it's like, this is where in the interpretation, you start to like not literally know 2 charts are the same. So anyway, what does a conjunction feel like now? What kind of communication are any planets in conjunction having with each other?
So if you look at the etymology of that word, if you break it down, con means together, and I think junct means together too. So it's the coming together of 2 planets. It's like a junction. So that kind of blends these energies together, because we'll just focus on this Mercury Sun conjunction. So that brings a lot of Mercury's energy to Meli's personality. It brings a lot, like she's a very mercurial individual. She's always thinking, her mind is very active. She's great at communicating. So that gives her specific Aries sun sign, it's a very unique flavor. So it's kind of like a blending of the two planets. Now, if we look at my chart, I have Moon conjunct Jupiter by 1 degree. So it's pretty close. When a further away planet, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, is conjunct with an inner planet like the moon, that brings a lot of that heavier, bigger kind of energy to the personal planet. So they are, it's just a blending. It's a blending of their energies, kind of mixing it all together, like dropping it in a bag, stirring everything together, and then voila.
So are you saying that you have big feelings?
Big feelings.
You have big feelings. How do you feel about those big feelings?
Girlfriend, I'm working on it.
Sometimes it's a thing. Yeah. So anyway, I would say too that a conjunction, so how Maggie just described it, I think is particularly relevant when we're talking about a person, when we're talking about the natal chart. When we're talking about transits or synastry, then we're looking at like this sparky, like activating. That's a word that you'll hear a lot when we're talking about aspects, is so that something's been activated. And there's almost like a catalytic energy about it. You just like literally think about, this is dramatic, but like if the moon and Jupiter in this case, like smashed into each other, they conjuncted each other, that would activate some shit. There would be some energy, something would happen, right? It would be cataclysmic. That is kind of that conjunction energy, especially more so in the transit and synastry world.
It's so fun. It makes a big difference. I know I've talked about it before, but I know a Taurus with her sun conjunct Mars, and she is such an active, what's next? What's next? Like atypical Taurus. And it's because Mars is impacting her personality.
Yep. Yeah. And the blend, the way that you described it as a blend, I love that. And I mean, when you think about it too, just like you just described, or even if we look at my sun Mercury, or even in your case, there is still like an activation energy there. It's almost like you're like always activated in that way, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we both have Mercury conjunct Sun, but mine is different because they're in 2 different signs. So just a little note there.
There's so many different ways it can go. And we've talked about that before too, because it's so evident. Like my Ariesness is super on display, whereas Maggie's Scorpio sun is quite strong at that 28 degree. And then the way that she thinks and communicates is so much more Sagittarian than it is Scorpion.
Thank God.
Scorpionic. I said so much more than scorpion, like the animal. Okay. All right. So that's conjunction. Yay. Basically, you're 0 to 5 and maybe up to about 10 degrees. We'll keep that because you're going to hear a lot of numbers here for each of the aspects. And next, we're going to get into an opposition. So an opposition is literally the opposite of what a conjunction was. And it's an 180 degree orb, if you will. It's really actually an 180 degree relationship is really the right thing to say. They're having that's their distance from each other. And so, but when we talk about orbs, I'll say that the same orb still applies. And what I mean by that is, let's say we were looking at, or in this case, like you've got my Pluto in Scorpio at 11 degrees, and then it's opposing my Jupiter in Taurus at 9 degrees. So there's a 2 degree orb there. If Taurus was at, 15 degrees, or Jupiter, excuse me, then we wouldn't really be looking at a proper opposition anymore. If it were the sun opposing, then again, we would give it a little bit more spaciousness. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So when you're looking at the opposition, you are looking at the same modality always, right? Because we know that when we've got this axis of Scorpio, Taurus, both fixed signs, different elements, water and earth, whenever you're looking at an opposition, you're always working with opposing energies. There's a lot of different ways we can look at this. The way that fixed water wants to exist and move and be is totally different than how earth fixed energy wants to behave. That's true. Fine. So that's different. Then there's also the way of looking at it where it's like two sides of the coin, like where Scorpio is doing something this way, Taurus might have some insight on how to maybe, oh, well, what if we also do it this way? And they could balance each other out, right? There's like the two signs that make this axis. There's always, even though they're opposite, this understanding between the two and how they sort of help to fit into each other, I suppose I would say. It's almost like one helps to complete the other. So there's two different ways to look at that. And then you think of opposites attract, right? So you're like, well, is opposite really bad? It's not a bad thing. It's, however, when we're looking at it astrologically, more often than not, a more difficult aspect, something that causes tension. I think of this as a tug of war. You can think of it as a face-off also, right? So in this case, I would simply say, I imagine that Pluto is standing at one end of the tug of war rope holding his knot, and Jupiter is standing on the other end holding theirs. And you get this push-pull energy that goes back and forth, back and forth. So it's dictated here by that red line. And generally, at least here in Luna, and it's pretty similar in most softwares, but you see that what I would call more difficult energies are in red. Right? Red signifies like, and then blue and teal are sort of like more easeful, softer aspects, as they're called. So here, this opposition, this very clear red line is how we find an opposition in the chart. And then again, the way that we look at it is versus, let's just use it in comparison or in contrast to the conjunction, where that's like a catalytic, it's a blending. This is not so much. This is like these two they're disagreeing a bit. And you gotta, knowing that that's the case, you start to kind of think, okay, well, Pluto represents power and obsession and transformation. And then you've got Jupiter, that's expansion and growth and all these things. And it's like, okay, well, then when it comes to matters of transformation or this expansion and growth and luck and abundance, there might be a little bit of might not be easeful for Meli, whose chart this is, to sort of bring those things into balance. There might be a constant sort of struggle between leaning more in this direction versus leaning more in the other direction. And now, one more thing I want to say on that, and again, never to try to complicate too much, but also never trying to simplify too much too. Jupiter is my chart ruler. We know this because I'm a Sagittarius rising and Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So Jupiter plays a way bigger role in my chart than Pluto does. So that's not to downplay anything here. It's just to say that when we're interpreting, we don't just forget all the other shit that we know. We have to figure out, and that's why the word synthesis is used, because a lot of interpreting and then synthesizing all of this crazy information, and the usage of your intuition ends up being way more important here than just I've read, a dozen different books and I know all these things. I know the terms, I understand them. Here, you have to like let yourself feel into also like, oh, but maybe it leans more heavy over here. And I wouldn't expect that that's actually much too difficult for this person. Whereas sometimes I pull a chart that has a lot of oppositions and I'm like, wow, this person must really feel the struggle between X and Y, whatever those two things are. Like Aries and Libra is always, I feel like an easy one to sort of use as an example here, because Aries is very focused on me and Libra is very focused on partnership. And so if you like, for example, had a bunch of oppositions in Aries and Libra, there'd probably be a pretty major like giving to myself for self-care and whatnot and giving to others. An easier way of saying that. I do want to say one more thing about oppositions that I want to show in your chart, but is there anything that you want to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. So one more thing I want to mention, Maggie, you'll notice, does technically have two oppositions, but hers are actually perfect to describe what it is that I want to say here, which is that you will always, 100% of the time, there will be an opposition between your ascendant and your descendant. The rising sign and the descendant, right? Our IC and MC as well. There's no opposition line there in this particular case, but either way, those oppositions are always present. You know, I'm wondering actually what this is showing us. I think this is actually, I'm glad that this is happening right now. I think this is actually showing us the north node opposite the DC and the south node opposite the AC, because I don't think it always shows the opposition line for the angles. And I don't know if it always go back to mine real quick. Does it show the opposition in the nodes? No. Okay, this is actually like a wonderful, fun. Okay, so the nodes are always opposite each other. The AC, DC, and MCIC are always opposite each other. I feel like maybe in astro.com or somewhere else that does show you the opposition line. It may very well also be a setting that you could turn on and off. That's probably very true, at least for sure in Luna. But here, Maggie just so happens that her nodes are conjunct. How fun. All of the lesson coming together at once. Conjunct her ascendant descendant axis by just 3 degrees. And so what this is actually showing is, like I said before, the opposition between the north node over in her first house and the DC over in the 7th. And then the south node right there conjunct the DC, and that being opposite the ascendant. So kind of a moot point, but not completely. Still important to note that those are always, the nodes and the angles are always opposite each other. And that in some softwares, you might actually see a line there, or if for some reason you wanted it turned on, I feel pretty certain you could probably turn it on here too. But anyway, that was my last note on oppositions.
I've never noticed that before.
Me neither. I know, it was a fun little impromptu lesson.
I think it's important to remember, like, this sometimes can feel like conflict. If you're feeling pulled in one direction and the other simultaneously, it can feel like parts of you are butting heads. And then I just think of all the like mental health things that are going on, all the things that people are dealing with, and thinking that it's problems. But I think that if you're feeling conflicted, if you're feeling like there's a part of you that wants to go one way and a part of you that wants to go another way, I think that's an invitation for curiosity. So look at your chart, see if you can find any oppositions, but then also think about just how it feels to be you. Are there parts of yourself that are at odds with other parts? And I think the best way to deal with that, of course, is self-awareness. So
I was going to say opportunity for curiosity and awareness. Couldn't have said it better myself. All of that. Yeah. Cool. All right, Maggie, let's get into squares. You have a couple of those.
I do. We're going to highlight them. All right. So this square, I want to highlight this for you. In the chart, I have my Moon and Jupiter conjunction at odds with my Venus. All of these planets are in cardinal signs. My Moon and Jupiter, Libra is cardinal, Capricorn is cardinal. So they're just at odds with each other. There's a little bit more friction between, because they're trying to go in their own way. They think that like they all want to start, they all want to be cardinal, they all want to do the thing, take action. And sometimes like they're just not on the same page. They might be pulling in different directions. It helps me to think about a 4-way stop. We had a lot of 4-way stops in Fort Wayne, and it was, you'd always pull up, like everyone would pull up at the same time. And then it was that really choppy, like, do I go? Do you go? And you start and stop and start and stop. It's not an easy flow of energy. And it's a little bit more broken up, a little bit more conflict or tense or like friction. And this is the coolest thing ever, because if you never felt friction, if you never felt conflict, you would never feel like growing or changing or trying something new. And I get so fired up about this because I do it too. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but we think that conflict is so bad and it's a problem and I need to solve it and I need to do the thing to make myself feel better, when really curiosity would be the best way to approach a feeling of conflict within yourself. Where is this coming from? For me, a lot of times it is my Moon wanting its emotional security, and then my Venus like wanting to be liked. It's so funny. Libra wants that too, but just that those two wants, those two desires are at odds with each other sometimes. And so when I notice that feeling of uncomfortableness or discomfort within me, I can do a couple of things. I can do whatever I can to avoid it. I can open up my phone and start scrolling on stuff. I can pretend like everything's fine and just be like toxic positive. Or I can be like, where's this coming from? Is there like, how far back can I think about this and start to work with the conflict like you care about it instead of you just want to get rid of it as fast as possible? Do you have anything to add?
I think I love that. I think back to our episode with Penny Thornton and how she talked about when she looks at synastry between two people that she prefers to see squares. And I think that that's not what I would say that that's an unpopular opinion. I don't think that most astrologers would say that, because pressure, tension are things, friction are not words that you would think you really want in a relationship. So when you're looking at the relationship between two people, you're like, oh, well, it'd be nice if there was flow, but it's like, well, yeah, but I'd like to see a mix of the two. But in particular, the squares are going to show you where, again, this catalytic energy exists between two people. It's like, that's, I feel like, what you're talking about, right? Like something that actually inspires you to move, inspires you to make change. And as you're saying, though, again, through curiosity and self-awareness, you're choosing to do those things from a place of being sort of nudged in that direction. But then you're the one who's like, I'm gonna take this nudge, I'm gonna take this discomfort, and I'm gonna like actually alchemize it instead of just be frustrated by it, because it could go either way.
For sure. It's really easy to just get frustrated.
Yeah. And especially in this case, actually, it's interesting. I didn't know what you were going to say about the Venus and Capricorn, between being liked or whatever. But my first interpretation when I look at this one is that your moon in Libra wants to be loved and just liked and wants every peace and harmony and just everything to be happy. And so that's like that people pleasy energy that can come. And especially with Jupiter there, I think like that can get heightened. And then you have your Venus in Capricorn, like you love to do and to do with purpose. So to me, I see this as like, okay, what I actually want to do is just like exist in peace, please. Could I just like, like just chill and not actually have to do much and have things just like flow. And then your Venus is like, no, but we want to, like, we love to do things. Let's go do. So it's this like, I see it as tension between those two things, which
that feels very appropriate.
So many different ways to interpret it, but that's the thing. Like it's, you say it that way and I'm like, oh, I see that. And then I say it my way and you're like, yeah, that too. And so there's never just the one way. Okay, perfect. So now that we are done with our two harder aspects, which were the opposition and square, 180, 90 degrees, the two of those are in the same modalities. So you experience some friction here and a little bit harder. Okay, we're going to get into the softer aspects now. And that starts with the trine. The trine, doesn't it just sound nice? Is a 120 degree relationship between two planets. Maggie's got quite a few trines going. I want to focus on her Mars trining Sun. And it's technically trining Pluto too. Because as we've learned now with our conjunction in our orbs, if we look over there in her 12th house, you see that she's got her Sun conjunct Pluto by 5 degrees. And then she's also got that 1 degree conjunction to Mercury, which she pointed out in Sagittarius. Well, you see those 3 trine lines, which are the teal with the triangle, equilateral triangle in the middle. Those are going up to Mars in Cancer at 27 degrees. So Mars is kind of sitting in the middle of that all, but it is closest to the sun. Now, a trine is, whenever you see a trine, you've got the planets that are in play here are in the same element, right? So here we're working with Scorpio and Cancer. And anytime we're working with the same element, there's just an understanding that the element has, right? Like water understands water. And Scorpio is our fixed water sign, while Cancer is our cardinal. So yes, there is a modality change there, but the element automatically just means that they're kind of like on the same playing field. They just understand each other. So this is considered a very flowy, supportive, and I'm going to use the word automatic here because this is an energy that you don't really need to activate. It's just already happening. There's just this flow between these planets. So with Maggie, I look at this and I see Mars, the planet of action and drive, and I see it in Cancer. I already know that this person is like probably like very fiercely protective of the people they love. That's usually how Cancer shows up, but there's lots of different ways to look into it, but at least I just know, okay, so I've got an idea of the Mars, and then I'm like, oh, it's trining the Sun and Pluto and Mercury. So all this Scorpionic and this little bit of Sagittarius, and with the Sun and Mercury being personal planets, very important to the essence of Maggie. I know that there is a Martian influence to all of that. So I'm going to use the Sun and the Mercury and the Pluto, because it's there, as sort of like the foundation here, because the Sun literally represents the personality. Then I'm going to say, okay, there's this trine relationship, this flow, this support that these players have with each other, right, on the board of directors. And it's automatic because nobody needs to flip a switch or do anything for this to happen. It just, there's this warrior, strong, action-oriented, motivated side that is very much a part of Maggie because of this relationship. This is, I like to think of it like Maggie was talking about the four-way stop sign. We think of this often as a very clear communication, a conversation with your best friend, right? Like, I don't know about you, but when I was in, middle school, high school, I loved being on the phone on my landline back in the day until 1 a.m, chitty chatting away with my best friends. And that right there, right? Like back then we weren't, well, wires can get crossed. That was a thing, but it was more infrequent. But we weren't dropping the call. Like there was no weird robotic sounds. Like you were just having an easeful conversation. You're laughing, and that kind of energy is how I like to think of the trine energy. So that's it with them. What would you like to add?
I love that. I think this is kind of broad just for the softer, the trine and the sextile. Like the squares and oppositions, you might not even remember that you have this tool in your tool basket. It just might not, like it's such a part of who you are. You were born with this tool and you might have just forgotten that you have it, because it's not as uncomfortable as tension,
Your tool basket? What's a tool basket?
I've never, a tool belt.
I was like, I've never, I want a basket of tools. Just open that sucker right up. What do we got in there? Yeah, I like that. That's true. It's because we're so used to it. It's like a gift. It's like we're so used to it being there that we don't even think of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned the other soft aspect, which is the sextile. So let's see what we have for sextiles. I think I have a couple.
So a sextile, similar to a trine, like Meli said, is more of a gift. Okay. It's easier. Oh, I don't like that one. That is to the IC. We're going to do Pluto. There we go. Okay. So in Meli's chart, we see Pluto at 11 degrees of Scorpio, and then we see Neptune at 10 degrees of Capricorn. So these are different elements and different modes. No relation whatsoever, but they're both yin energies. They're both more feminine. The earth signs and water signs have that. It's just more receptive than fire and air. So in these two, we see a sextile in a chart. We see this little asterisk with the teal line. That is the symbol that you'll know that is, you're looking at a sextile. And again, this is supportive. It doesn't take as much energy to activate. It's always there. And I think that a sextile has just a little bit more energy to it than a trine. It's a little bit more like fizzly and sparkly and sexy. So these two planets, Pluto, this big, well, it's little, but it's got big transformative powers. It's got this ability to transform and alchemize and accept your power of, like, you're the one that's in charge of your life. So there's a lot of power here with Pluto. And then we have Neptune down here in Capricorn. They're communicating really easily. So to me, this says with Neptune in an earth sign that Meli has this ability to bring her dreams into tangible form. And it's a very powerful gift. She's been able to transform her life many times over by dreaming something up and then implementing the strategies that need to happen in order to bring it into tangible form.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, I'll take it. I love that. I sure have that. It is actually true.
It
And
is.
I love that. Something that was described to me about the sextiles, and I don't remember where this was from, but that I tend to think of as a distinction between the sextile and the trine. I don't know if we've talked about this on an episode before or not, but is the ideal. And this is why I brought in that word automatic with trine, because with the sextile, it's not as automatic. The sextile, I think of it as like these two planets are holding out a hand to support each other. But then the question is like, are you going to use it or not? Right. Like the trine is like always flowing, like that energy is just going. And I like to think for me, I'm like, well, that makes sense because it's the same element. Right. And now here you do have the same gender, if you will, between that yin and yang, but there's no other stronger connection. So here it's like Pluto and Neptune are both like, and whenever I'm doing a reading, I literally do this. Like I like hold my hand out to the screen. Like, it's like, hey, I'm here to support you in your dreams to make that transformation happen. But like, you got to take my hand. It's not going to just happen. You kind of have to activate it. You have to like choose to use it. And so again, could not overstate how curiosity and this gift of self-awareness that it is to know these things can be super, super helpful in these cases. So have we talked about that before? That distinction between?
I don't, maybe in like the 101 episode, but I don't think you said it quite so eloquently.
I've used it. I've used it a few times now. So
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. So that's the sextile.
I did want to add,
oh,
they are 60 degrees away from each other. I don't think I said that in the beginning. So it's just every other sign would be that 60-degree range.
yes. Very good. All right. So we're going to wrap it up here with the in conjunction or the quincunx, which is just a funny word. And this is a 150-degree relationship between two planets. And this is the dark blue line in the middle. Maggie happens to have sesquiquadrate. Can you go back out real quick? I just want to make sure it's clear because there are multiple blue lines, but I want you to see the distinction between the in conjunction is this, it looks like a horse to me, like a sawhorse.
Yeah.
My husband does a lot of like construction-y type work. That right there, that's what you're looking at for an in conjunction. Maggie is very click happy right now. Go out real quick. And then the other one, the other blue, which when we have your settings set up, we probably won't have this one turned on. This is called the sesquiquadrate. And when we talked about that there are a shit ton of aspects, that would be the example of another shit ton. We're not going to look at that one. But let's look at the moon in conjunct. Okay, yeah, perfect. So you've got the moon over in the 7th house in Gemini at 3 degrees. This is again my natal chart at the moment, and we're looking at an in conjunction going over to the Uranus and Saturn conjunction in Capricorn. Okay. There is no relationship at all between these two signs. They do not understand each other by modality. They do not understand each other by element, and they do not understand each other by yin yang. They're just totally like, who are you and what are you doing over there? And why are you doing it that way? Basically. It's like, we all know somebody who we meet or somebody who's in our family, even sometimes, or a friend, whatever. And it's just like the choices they make in their life, the way that they move through life, everything. You're like, what? Like, what? Why? Why would you do it that way? That's what I think of when I see this relationship. I don't know if did I say 150 degrees? If I didn't, I meant to 150 degrees. And so this sort of sits in, I would say, closer to the hard aspect category, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned here. There's a lot of, what's the word I want to use?
Opportunities.
Yeah, it's definitely opportunities. I was going to say, I was kind of trying to, Jesus Christ. I was kind of trying to find a way to distinguish this from like the harder aspects, but really there's lessons available through all of them. There's opportunities through all of them. So maybe there's not really a distinguishing necessary there, just so much as there's potential with this. When I see a quincunx, I consider how it is that these energies can come to find some sort of middle ground. How can they come to see each other's way a little bit more? With the squares and the oppositions, I wouldn't expect that, because I already know elementally and modality wise, like they just sit where they sit and do what they do the way that they do. And they're not going to actually see each other. They might compromise in some way. But more so, you're learning how to like deal with hard things. Here, I think it's a little bit different, where there's this potential to find middle ground, which sure could look like a compromise, but it's not as hard. What it is I think is a little bit more annoying, a little bit more tedious. So I like to think of this as a trial and error. The strategy here is trial and error. So in the way that the moon functions over in Gemini, right? My Gemini moon loves connection and communication and is very mercurial, likes to think, and just has all these different things going on in this airy aspect up here of life. And then over Saturn and Uranus and Capricorn are like, what do you mean up here? I like to put my feet in the ground. I like to be stable. I like to be secure. I like to have a plan. And my Gemini moon is like, no, but wait, let's just like fly by the seat of our pants and see what happens. And two totally different things. We start to look at the moon. That's my emotional body. We look at Saturn. Let's just take Saturn for simplicity for a moment. Saturn is lessons. So we start to then like just see how, and this feels very accurate for me knowing myself, when I always think that there's something to be learned from everything, right? And so like when I am going through a process, which I feel like I'm always going through a process, my moon body, my emotional body is aware that there are lessons to be learned here, whether I freaking want to or not. And I must learn them. That's like the drive of Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn saying like, hey, I get that you want to just like live in the what ifs and how can I fix this and like ask all the questions and be all fucking Gemini and shit. But I'm really going to need you to like anchor into this lesson. Okay. And the Uranus there for me, like wherever we see Uranus, there's going to be this destabilization. There's going to be also this different sort of like things are not going to happen probably the way that you would expect them to. The expect the unexpected is a big Uranian phrase. And I mean, you've only known me for a few years. Would you say that when it comes to the emotional things and lessons that there's like a little bit of unexpected that tends to crop up for me?
Yep, I would say that.
Yep. And I feel like as I'm internally going through my processes, which because of my Gemini moon, I'm going through them internally, but I'm probably talking about them. It is a constant, like, nope, that didn't fucking work, or didn't love that, or da, da, da. And there is that trial and error thing. But as I grow, it gets easier. I get better at it. And so that to me, I've never actually broken this one down, but I have goosebumps right now because I feel like that just helped me. Look at that. Just
look at that.
peeled back another layer, if you will. Cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's all I got. Do you have anything that you would like to add?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Just all opens up so much room for curiosity. As we were talking, I thought it would be really fun, listener, and maybe me too, I might do this, to get like a notepad, draw a line down the middle, put your hard aspects on one side, your easy aspects on the other, and you have this unique list of strengths and weaknesses that you can look at from a different lens and choose like, okay, I know this is a strength. I'm going to focus on building this week because I really want to be able to draw this tool out of my tool belt with greater ease, or I want to remember that I have it. And then for the weaknesses or the harder things, you can know how to set yourself up for success better, like work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. Will you take this? We don't need to look at the chart anymore, but I love that. And Maggie, that could just be an activity that we do in the class.
Shoot.
We haven't figured out all of our activities yet. Well, it seems like Maggie just figured one out. So we'll have to play around with that. I love that. Yeah, so much room for curiosity, like you said, and growth and understanding and all the things. So that concludes our episode, our class for the day on aspects. And our next two, the last two classes of Celestial Essentials will be synthesis. So we are going to take all of this shit and we're going to start throwing it all in to your tool basket, or you're going to take things out of the tool basket. Something's going to happen. There will be a basket and then there will be charts and we'll be synthesizing. So we're going to do a natal synthesis, then a biwheel synthesis, and we'll do a bunch of practice in those realms. And everyone's going to be selecting charts that they want to use. You can be looking at your favorite actors, singers, your kids, your whomevers. And there's going to be opportunity for a lot of different actual one-on-one practice in a group setting. We both said that. That's funny. I mean, it's gonna whatever, you know.
There will be hot seats. You will have opportunities to employ all of this, and then guess what? By doing it, you're gonna go to that's how you get to the next level of your astrology practice.
Boom. That's right. Drop the mic. All right, awesome. Thank you everybody for being here. We appreciate you so much. Hopefully you learned some stuff here today, and we will see you next time. Until then, stay curious. Oh, blessings.
Golly, what an episode.
All of the interwebs.